Okay, year 3. So hopefully by now you've had a chance to have a read of the text, Duel of the Scrapbots, and you should hopefully have had a go at answering some of the questions yourself. Not to worry if you haven't had a go at it independently, because basically what I'm going to now do is guide you through how to answer the questions, sort of how we do it in class as a guided comprehension. But I just thought if you wanted to have a go at it yourself, that way you could have had a go, and now I can go through it and hopefully we can compare your answers with my answers. So basically, another thing is that obviously I've sent out the text for you to print out, but don't worry if you can't print it out. I personally don't have a printer myself, so I can't print things out either. But basically what I do is I would just handwrite all of my work like that. So I basically answered all the questions myself like this in my book, so it's all handwritten, which is absolutely fine. Now I personally have copied out the questions just because that helps me, but you don't have to copy out the questions yourself. If you did want to handwrite it, you could just write number 1 and write the answer. That would be a lot easier, save you a lot of time. But I personally prefer the questions myself, so I just handwrite the questions, copy them down. But anyway, just trying to make the point that you do not actually have to print anything. It's not an expectation, but obviously if you can get some work done via what we're sending out that way, it's absolutely fine, isn't it? So anyway, let's first of all read the text again, because as we know, when we're doing comprehension, we need to make sure we read it a few times, and we'll go through the questions. So I'm going to read the text out again. So, Duel of the Scrapbots. Scrap metal monster, scrap metal school, black metal, rap metal, dark metal ghoul, scrap metal mountain, scrap metal hall, sharp metal, death metal, spike metal tool, scrap metal mayhem, scrap metal wall, stack metal, pack metal, dense metal hall, scrap metal manhunt, scrap metal brawl, crack metal, whack metal, crash metal fall, scrap metal meltdown, scrap metal cruel, tossed metal, lost metal, rust metal all. Very good poem there, I do like that one. So there you go. So it's a poem, obviously we should have hopefully identified by reading that text. We know that because obviously there is a lot of repetition. Hopefully we understand which bit is being repeated. Should be scrap metal, hopefully you've realised that one. But we do also have some rhymes in there as well, so it was a very clear poem, set out in verses, as one of the questions did ask you about a verse. Hopefully you were able to catch on that. But anyway, let's go through each question one by one, and we will go through the answers. So, question number 1 says, look at the first verse. Which 2 words mean a type of evil creature? Which 2 words mean a type of evil creature? So look at the first verse, so look back at the text, look at the first verse. Which 2 words mean an evil type of creature? Hopefully you would have understood that the 2 types of words would be monster, that's one of them, and the other one, hopefully if you are looking at the very top verse, okay, you can hopefully see the different verses. It's only in that bit, that's all we're looking at. So monster is one of them, and then the other one in that one should be ghoul. It should be ghoul, so it's monster and ghoul. Okay, monster and ghoul. Those are your first ones for number 1. So each of those would have got you the mark if you got both of them. Question number 2. Look at the third verse. So hopefully you now know where we're looking. Look at the third verse in your text. Find and copy one word that means the same as chaos. Now you may not know what the word chaos is, but remember what I've always told, well, my class anyway, remember what I've always told you is to use your brain, think which word sounds like it could mean that. Even if you don't know what it means, have a really good think. What do you think it might mean? Okay, so we're going to have a look at the third verse now. Let's actually read the third verse again. 1, 2, 3, there's that one. So, scrap metal mayhem, scrap metal wall, stack metal, pack metal, dense metal hall. So what's the question again? It was, look at the third verse, find and copy one word that means the same as chaos. One word, remember. Only one word, that's all I want. If I do any more than one word, I lose the mark. So, one word that means the same as chaos. Hopefully, we were able to either correctly guess or maybe we knew, but the word is mayhem. Mayhem is the closest one to that one, okay? So mayhem, not scrap metal mayhem. That would not have been correct. One word is what the question asked for, so that's all you write down is one word. Remember, read the question carefully. That's the key thing to remember. Right, number 3. What does the word brawl mean? Once again, this is, if you notice the subheading vocabulary, this is all stuff to do with words in the text, these first 3 questions. So what does the word brawl mean? Again, you may know what brawl means, you may not know what brawl means. So you have to tick 1. Again, tick 1. If you tick more than 1, you lose the mark. You must make sure we tick 1. Or in my case, I wrote it down. But the word brawl means fight. Okay, fight. That should have been the correct one. So if you tick the word fight, that gives you a mark for that one. Right, moving on to the retrieval questions, number 4. So look at verses 1 and 2. So we need to read both of those ones again. Write down 2 of the places built from scrap metal. Write down 2 of the places built from scrap metal. So again, I'd look back in my text. I think, right, which places were built from scrap metal? So I'm going to read the first verse. It says the first 2. I'm going to read the first one first. Scrap metal monster. Scrap metal school. Ah, there we go. School is one of them. That's a place. That's it, isn't it? School. Okay. Let's look at the second one. Scrap metal mountain. Scrap metal hall. Scrap metal, death metal, spike metal tool. So actually, there could be 2 potential answers here, couldn't there? Because there are 2 places listed. Okay. So the 2 places listed here are mountain, but we could also be hall, couldn't it? In mine, I wrote down mountain. But you could actually get a mark for hall as well. So the 2 answers you need are 1, definitely school. You need that for the first one. That's the only place mentioned. And then for B, the second one, is going to be either mountain or hall. So as long as you got one of those 2 with school, that's it. Well done. You got the mark for that one. Number 5. What noise does the falling metal make? What noise does the falling metal make? So hopefully we were able to identify that the metal was falling. So the first thing I would look for is I'd find the word fall or falling. So I'm going to look back through the text. I'm going to skim read it now. Where is it? The word fall. There it is, the 4th verse. Right at the end, fall. And it says there, crash metal fall. So question says, what noise does the falling metal make? Well, it's crash metal. Okay. Metal is what's falling, it's crashing, isn't it? So it makes a crash sound. Okay, that's the crash sound. So actually it needed to be crash. I'd have also given you a mark if you'd have written crashing, or maybe it crashes or something like that, but crash is the word you need there to get you the mark. Okay, that's all you needed for that one. Number 6. How do we know there is a lot of scrap metal in the scrapyard? So if you notice in number 6, there are 2 lines on that question. So think about how detailed your answer needs to be in order to get the mark, okay? You need to make sure it's detailed enough to get you the mark. So I'm going to read out my answer, because as you can see, here's my answer, okay? Quite detailed. I'm going to read out what I've written. So I've written, how do we know that there is a lot of scrap metal in the scrapyard? I've said, because the phrase, and I've quoted scrap metal, is repeated throughout the poem, that's how we know, and because the scrapyard is referred to as scrap metal mountain, which tells me that the scrapyard is a very large place to hold lots of scrap metal. So that is a very detailed answer that literally answers the question, doesn't it? So the question was, how do we know there's a lot of scrap metal? Well, we know there's a lot of scrap metal because the word scrap metal has been repeated throughout the poem, so we can assume there's lots of scrap metal as it keeps on saying it. And it actually compares it to a scrap metal mountain. Now we know a mountain is very, very big, so obviously that means there's lots and lots of scrap metal, doesn't it? So that's evidence that tells me that that's how I know there is a lot of scrap metal. Right, moving on to the inference section, number 7. So, number 7 says, using information from the poem, tick 1 box in each row to show whether each statement is true or false. So as we can see there, we've got a box saying true and a box saying false, and it says tick one box in each row to show whether each statement is true or false. So we're going to read each one of those and we'll identify if it's true or false. So number one, the first one says, the junkyard is a safe place. So, I mean, I think we can already tell if it's a safe place or not based on the title. It's Duel of the Scrapbots. Obviously, they're robots. They are fighting in a scrapyard. And I am back. I'm very sorry for that, everyone. Mr. Woodman's phone call. I tried to ignore it, everyone, but sadly when I rejected the call, it interrupted my recording and cut me off. So, anyway, I am back to continue where we were. So, number 7, I believe. Yeah. So we were saying it's true or false, and we're going to go through if each statement is true or false. So, the junkyard is a safe place. So, do we think the junkyard is a safe place? I'm going to say no, because obviously, as we know, they are fighting. There's a lot of, brawls, things like that. So I'm going to say no, it's false, that one. The scrap metal is stacked high. Well, we've just established that we know there was a scrap metal mountain. So yes, I would agree. The scrap metal is stacked high. That means it's very high up. It's in a form of a mountain shape. That one is true. And the scrapyard has a dangerous tall spike of metal. The scrapyard has a dangerous tall spike of metal. So again, I'm just going to double check the text. Does it say anything about a tall spike of metal? Yep, it literally says spike metal tool. Sharp metal, death metal, spike metal tool. Okay, so we literally know spike metal tool. It's literally in the text. That one is true. So it should have been for that one false, true, true. Number 8. Look at verses 3 and 4 copied below. Then complete the statement. So this is really helpful because it's actually given you verses 3 and 4 right there for you to see. So, which verse describes a fight in the scrapyard? Which verse describes a fight in the scrapyard? So again, I need one of those words that means the same thing as fight. Okay, and we already established earlier that we understood that a brawl was a fight. That was one of the previous questions. So which one of those says brawl? Verse number 4. So I'd write down here verse 4. Okay, so that's why I've written it. So I've literally just written verse 4. Okay, and done it like that. B. Which verse describes the building of a metal wall? So again, I'm going to read both of them again, just double check. Oh, there you go, verse 3, scrap metal wall, literally right there, so it's got to be verse 3, hasn't it? It says it directly in the text. I'm going to write it down, verse 3. And C, which phrase tells us that moving the metal is hard work? Which one verse tells me that moving the is hard work? So I want an actual phrase this time. It doesn't actually say which verse, it says which phrase. So it doesn't actually say which one of these two, so I need to actually write down the phrase. So which phrase tells us that moving the metal is hard work? So quick check here. Well, this is a bit tricky here because you'd have to know what the word dense means. So dense means to be something that's very heavy. Okay, if something is very heavy, it's dense. Okay, so when it says here dense metal haul, okay, a haul is basically where you are heaving it along. It's really heavy. Okay, so it's dense metal haul. It's the phrase that you're looking for there. Okay, so dense metal haul is what I've written down on mine. That tells me that moving the metal is hard work because it's really heavy and we're hauling it along. Okay, so again, haul is another word you'd need to know. Question D, which 3 words create onomatopoeia? And it even tells you what onomatopoeia means if you don't know what onomatopoeia is, in brackets, where the word sounds like the sound it is describing. That's what onomatopoeia means. So onomatopoeia is any word that basically sounds like a big sound. It could be like crash or bang or whack or smack, something like that. Anything that's describing the impact a sound is making, okay? So it says, which 3 words create onomatopoeia? So if I look back at, and again I'm looking at verses 3 and 4 because it did say at the beginning of the question, look at verses 3 and 4. So, which three words? So, the words I chose were crack, whack, and crash. If you look in the end of verse 4, crack metal, whack metal, crash metal, fall. Okay, the three words on either the onomatopoeia, okay, or the onomatopoeic words, those are crash, whack, and crash. Okay, crack, whack, and crash. Those words are telling me the sound the impact is making. Number 9. We're on the summarise section now. So, which verse gives the idea of the adventures in the scrapyard ending? Now, very key here, it says ending in the question, doesn't it? Which verse gives the idea of the adventures in the scrapyard ending? So, if you think, which part of that poem might be the ending? Is it going to be verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, or verse 5? Well, it's an ending. It's going to be the last verse, isn't it? Okay, very simple. So hopefully we would... and it also says circle 1. Sorry, circle 1. It doesn't say tick. Okay, it doesn't say write anything. It says circle 1. So you just have to draw a circle around whichever one you think it is. So the answer should be, for that one, verse 5. So as you can see with mine, I circled verse 5. And last one, number 10, authorial intent. Basically means what the author sort of meant by when they wrote this. Why do you think the poet chose the title Duel of the Scrapbots for this poem? Why do you think the poet chose the title Duel of the Scrapbots for this poem? Now, if you notice in this question, there are 4 lines. 4 lines. That tells me my answer needs to be much more detailed than just because it's a good title or because it tells me robots are fighting. It needs to be more detailed than that. That's not going to be enough to secure the maximum number of marks for that. It's got more lines. It means your answer needs to be detailed. Okay, so here is my detailed answer, as you can see, which I'm now going to read you, and you'll hopefully be able to see how I've able to secure the marks. So, why do you think the poet chose the title Duel of the Scrapbots for this poem? So I've written, I think that the poem is called Duel of the Scrapbots because a duel is another word for a fight or a battle, and the name Scrapbots refers to robots that are either built by scrap metal or are fighting in a scrapyard. So that is literally answering the question, isn't it? Why do I think the poet chose the title? I'm saying, well, I know what a duel is. Again, you need to know what a duel is. I know what a duel is. A duel is another word for a fight, okay, or a battle, okay? And the name Scrapbots is referring to the robots, okay? So I know that in my head I can picture robots that are fighting each other, and that is why Duel of the Scrapbots is a good title for this poem. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so I've given you my reasons why, and I've justified it by saying this is why I may think it's a good title for it. Okay, so it's why I think the poet chose it. Obviously the poet wants it to be a good title, so that's why they've chosen the name Duel of the Scrapbots. So again, any question that says why do you think in a comprehension test, you have to be very, very clear, usually giving reasons and evidence from the text, and that will get you the top number of marks for that question. So I do hope we've enjoyed this session. Again, well done if you did manage to have a go at doing that on your own. That's really, really good. Okay, but if you didn't and you just needed to go through it with me and work through the questions, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay, not a problem. That's why I'm doing it this way, to really help you and guide you through it. So, well done. We will have set B of those questions possibly tomorrow or possibly Wednesday. I haven't quite worked out when I'm going to do it yet, but we will do set B at some point this week. So the same text, but a different set of questions that goes with it. So, I will see you in the next time I need to do a video. So, keep working hard and take care. Thank you.